Imagine you have a magical notebook, and everything you write in it appears right in front of you. You can manipulate existing things like objects, animals, as well as people. Even the laws of physics obey your will. How was it possible that such a great concept, which sold over 13 million copies worldwide, ended up resulting in the layoff of 45 employees and being discontinued in the way people knew and loved it? In the next few minutes, we will see what led to the end of Scribblenauts. Firstly, in order to better understand the events that occurred and when they happened, we need a timeline to provide a clearer look. At this point, the timeline only shows the initial release dates of the games, but this will change. Our journey will lead us to the mysterious entry in March 2016, known as Scribblenauts Fighting Words. You probably haven't heard of it, or if you have, you don't know much about it whatsoever. This cancelled game became the breaking point not only for the franchise, but also for the studio Fifth Cell. Mention that this is not a retrospective or downfall video like you may have watched before. We won't talk about other franchises of the company unless they are directly related to the question what happened. It is not our main focus to find out how it ended, but to answer the question why it ended. For this, we will keep track of all the indicators we find to come to a conclusion. So without further ado, let's try to find an explanation for what went wrong. To understand what caused the event in 2016, we first need to know what made the series so great and unique. It all began on September 10th, 2007. If you're familiar with the series, you may be thinking, wait a second, Scribblenauts wasn't released until 2009. The timeline also shows this. And you are absolutely right. But let me explain. On this date, Fifth Cell released Drawn to Life, their first game for the Nintendo DS. Drawn to Life is a 2D action-adventure platformer that combines platforming, puzzle solving and drawing elements, allowing players to create and customize their own hero, objects and environments. It offers an easy-to-use paint set with various tools and tracing templates for your hero for those who are not naturally creative. It is an imaginative and unique game, giving players the ability to demonstrate their creative skills. It is a very satisfying experience to play a game where your own unique style is in focus, and to see your own drawings come to life on the screen. As you surely already noticed, the heart of the game is its drawing feature. For example, once the player draws a bouncing spring, it becomes a permanent element in the world. The principle applies every few minutes throughout the game, with new things that need to be drawn by you each time. The game sold over 800,000 units within the first 6 months after its release. While most critics praised Drawn to Life for its uniqueness and creativity, others criticized the mediocre gameplay, resulting in an overall metascore in the 70s. However, there is no doubt that this game marked a new level of potential for the idea of letting players be creative to complete a game. During the development of Drawn to Life, Jeremiah Selezka, keep that name in mind, he will play a big part through our journey, CEO and creative director of Fifth Cell, came up with the idea of another game. Inspired by the board game Mad Libs, the original concept of Scribblenauts involved drawing sentences on the lower screen to trigger actions on the upper screen. Initially called wordplay, among other ideas for names, the game required the player to write complete sentences similar to Mad Libs, where you fill in blanks. Also, it was a promising notion, it wasn't exactly a game, according to Zaletzka. He later merged this concept with a dream he had about solving puzzles in an Aztec temple to create Scribblenauts. But enough of that foreshadowing, let's dive into the world of Scribblenauts. Scribblenauts has a simple yet brilliant idea: to give players the ability to create anything they can imagine. The designers clearly put a lot of effort into building such an immense library of content. While in Drawn to Life you could only draw things the game wanted you to draw, in Scribblenauts you can create almost anything you can think of. From people to animals, vehicles and objects, and so on. By simply taking out your magical notebook and writing down your creative ideas, you can easily bring your imagination to life and use them to overcome the challenges presented in each level. If it exists, there's a fair chance it's represented in the game, as long as it's not a place, proper name, suggestive material, racial or copyrighted, and things like that. Moreover, players can sometimes add adjectives to their words. What's better than a broom? That's right, a flying broom, of course. The original Scribblenauts only allows a few adjectives to some words, something that will be further developed in the future. The library contains over 22,000 words, which is impressive. Yet, the original Scribblenauts is repetitive. Many words have the same outcome and most levels are solvable by using the same words over and over. In an interview with IGN, Zaletzka described the game as follows: Scribblenauts is about creation and imagination, really. It's our biggest DS title to date. What Scribblenauts is about in a nutshell is basically anything you write you can use. That's where the concept really came from. It's the idea of, what if you had all these puzzles and in order to solve them, you can write anything. The limit is your imagination. One really awesome thing about the levels is that once you beat one and you want back to play it again, you can't use the same objects again. This makes the player think through it again and figure out new ways to work through puzzles. While the first entries of the series lacked a story, the number of levels to solve did not. The first game alone had 220 unique levels, a number that will never be reached again. Plus a level editor that allowed players to create their own levels. Unfortunately, this editor did not have the option to build puzzle levels, but this changed in the following game, Super Scribblenauts. The main goal of the game is to solve the levels and collect the so-called star rights, which you get as a reward in every level. At the 2009 E3 convention, Scribblenauts made a big impact and was hailed as a surprise hit of the show. Not only did it win Best of Show awards from major gaming media outlets, but it also became the first portable video game in history to do so. The game received several accolades, including Best Original Game and Best Handheld Game by the Game Critic Awards, among others. On September 13, 2009, Scribblenauts was launched in a special event at the Nintendo World Store in New York City. Fans had the opportunity to meet and greet the developers, get their autographs, and even talk to them about the game. The celebration continued with a cake in the form of Maxwell, the game's protagonist, specially made for the event. Zaletzka himself cut the cake, or at least he tried. How do you even slice such a cake? Did they behead Maxwell in order to eat him? Oh god. Well, 2 days later, the game was officially released, and according to the NPD group, it sold 194,000 units within the first 2 weeks in the United States. The game's sales remained strong, and by December 2009 it had become the 16th best-selling game of the month in North America. As of February 2010, the game had sold over 1 million copies worldwide, confirming its status as a beloved title among gamers. Starting from that day on, 5th Cell released a new Scribblenauts game every year, all published by Warner Bros. Interactive. We've had multiple IP successes. The Scribblenauts franchise alone has generated close to 100 million in gross revenue. So down the line, it's totally possible for a company like us to do really big numbers, said Zaleska in an interview for Game Informer in 2011. After the success of Scribblenauts, it was clear they had to make a sequel. In 2010, Super Scribblenauts was released, which was essentially an improved version of the original game with more recognized words and a significant enhanced adjective system. Now your broom wasn't limited to just flying, but it could also be a big, pretty flying broom. In addition, it was now possible to move Maxwell directly using the control pad of the DS. 5th Cell listened to the feedback from the first game and improved every aspect of their new game. Even though it only got a slightly better rating than their first game, it was clearly better and optimized. With the increasing popularity of smartphones and tablets on the market, and the Nintendo DS reaching the end of its lifespan, it's no wonder that there had to be a Scribblenauts game for mobile devices. So in October 2011, Scribblenauts Remix released for iOS. The game included a total of 50 levels, consisting of 40 levels from Scribblenauts and its sequel Super Scribblenauts, as well as 10 new levels specifically designed for the iOS and Android platforms. It utilized the mechanics of Super Scribblenauts, which allowed players to use adjectives in addition to nouns when creating objects. Despite having only a few dozen levels, Scribblenauts Remix still holds the title for the best reviewed game in the Scribblenauts franchise to date, with an overall score of 86 on Metacritic. On November 14, 2011, it became the top-selling iOS game for the week, surpassing long-standing favorite Angry Birds. By February 2012, the game had been downloaded over 1 million times. The series reached its peak with popularity at an all-time high. In the upcoming games, the franchise lost its edge and gradually started to decline. The once innovative gameplay mechanics began to stagnate. This will be the first mark in the timeline as we begin to explore what happened with Scribblenauts. 1 year after the release of Scribblenauts Remix, the third main game in the series, or fourth if you count Remix as a main game, Scribblenauts Unlimited, was launched in November 2012 for the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U. Over the following years, it was ported to many other platforms, including PC and mobile devices. It was also the first game in the series to be available on Sony's PlayStation and Microsoft's Xbox consoles. This game was different in that it took place in a large open world that players could explore. Unlike the previous 2 games, where players had to select individual puzzles to earn star rights, Scribblenauts Unlimited had a more extensive backstory that explained why the regular protagonist Maxwell collected star rights. In the previous games, the star rights had no real purpose, but in this game, the player needed to collect them in order to save Maxwell's sister Lily. In an interview at the E3 convention in 2012 for Kotaku, Zaleska demonstrated one of the new features of the game. Players were now able to use an object editor where they could change all kinds of things, such as colorizing their creations with the help of a color palette. Looks familiar, doesn't it? while I had a lot of fun playing it, I agree that most of the objectives in Scribblenauts Unlimited were small 5-second fetch quests where an NPC would request an item and you would have to provide it using your magic notebook. There were numerous quests like these, some of which were so easy that they could be completed accidentally as previous creations collided, as some critics have pointed out. Scribblenauts Unlimited was the last real Scribblenauts game. From that point on, the series embarked on a wild ride through different genres. If you're thinking, well, there was only Scribblenauts Showdown with a different genre, then prepare to be surprised. The story of what happened around 5th Cell and the Scribblenauts franchise in the following years is as fascinating as it is melancholic. So get ready, from here on things go downhill. Thanks to the massive success of Scribblenauts and their other IPs, 5th Cell's team grew from around 20 employees in 2007 to a studio with up to 80 employees by 2012. In just 5 years, their gross revenue increased to over $100 million. Numbers that will never be reached again. In September 2013, Scribblenauts Unmasked was released. One of the most significant new features of the game was the inclusion of thousands of DC Comics characters, objects and places. Players could summon fan-favorite heroes like Batman, Superman and Aquaman. Yes, Aquaman. Along with the hero creator, where the player could, well, create their own hero or villain. Despite the new features, Scribblenauts Unmasked received mediocre reviews from critics and fans alike. Many criticized the game's lack of challenge and repetitive gameplay. The game's puzzles were often straightforward and required little effort to solve, leading to a sense of boredom and monotony for many players. The game's focus on the story mode also meant that there were fewer puzzles and challenges than previous Scribblenauts games. The game features randomly generated side quests that provide endless gameplay opportunities. However, many players found these side quests to be repetitive and lacking in depth. While the technology behind the generation of these quests was notable, their lack of purpose and substance made them feel pointless and uninspiring. Or in short, we can refer to a quote from Brittany Vincent at GamesRadar. The message is clear. To make any significant progress, you need to be practical instead of the dreamer Scribblenauts wants you to be. If you're a Scribblenauts vet looking to see if the issues plaguing prior games have finally been addressed, though, you're going to end up disappointed. While Scribblenauts Unlimited has a popularity score of 38 to date, with more than 5 million units sold on Steam alone, Unmasked has a lackluster score of 7 with only around 1 million units sold. For those who don't understand how the popularity score is calculated, it is an overall score that combines all available data, such as the total numbers of players and active players, and compares it to other games. In short, Unlimited is more than 5 times more popular than Unmasked. It gets worse when we look at Google Trends and compare Unmasked, Unlimited and Remix side by side. Not only did the newest entry in the series receive only slightly more attention in its first week after release, which is still only a third of the hype generated by Unlimited a year earlier, it never came close to matching the success of Scribblenauts Unlimited. In fact, it had to compete against Remix and ultimately lost out in the long run. With that in mind, Warner Bros. Interactive had to decide what all that meant for the future of the series. They had 2 options. A. We need to learn from the game's shortcomings and return to its roots for future improvements. B. Even our flagship DC universe couldn't save the game. Nobody wants to play this kind of game anymore. Scribblenauts is dead. What do you think was their conclusion? That's right. B, of course. Because if there was one thing that could definitely save a niche game like Scribblenauts, it was making it even more niche. But joking aside, on paper the idea sounds good. If you combine two franchises, you could theoretically multiply the audience. However, in this case it had the opposite effect, decreasing the audience. People who liked Scribblenauts didn't necessarily like the DC universe and vice versa, resulting in low sales. Its lack of challenge, repetitive gameplay and mediocre story mode were significant drawbacks that led to its mixed reception. It fell short of the high expectations set by the earlier entries in the series, as reflected in the low sales figures that followed its release, and it marked the end of the Scribblenauts as we knew and loved it. Earlier, in May 2013, Warner Bros. Interactive and Fifth Cell were sued by Charles Schmidt and Christopher Orlando Torres, the creators of Keyboard Cat and Neon Cat. Fifth Cell had used these copyrighted characters without permission, violating their own rules. The case was settled out of court, with Warner Bros. Obtaining official licensing for the two cat characters in the game. However, this incident is yet another piece in the puzzle that led to the end of the Scribblenauts franchise. While this lawsuit may not seem like a major event, unexpected expenses like this can create complications for future deals between publisher and developer. The next year passed by, but there was no sign of a new game. And the following year, the same thing. Actually, Fifth Cell never created another Scribblenauts game ever again, except for re-releases of older titles. We could end this video here. We've covered the story, what made the franchise big, and why it officially came to an end. It's pretty common for a publisher to kill a franchise after one game that didn't sell as expected, no matter what the reasons may be. No sales, no sequel. It's as simple as that. You may think now, that can't be the whole story. There must be more to it. Especially since you mentioned different genres earlier. Where are they? And the answer is yes. If you like it or not. Of course there's more. We are not done yet. In response to declining sales and revenues, Warner Bros. Interactive underwent a major restructuring in 2014 and early 2015. The company faced tough competition from other gaming studios and a shift towards mobile gaming, which resulted in fewer sales for their console games. As a result, they cut costs, which led to a significant number of layoffs, which will also affect Fifth Cell in the following years. There were several factors that contributed to the decline in revenue and profit margins before the restructuring. Some of the studio's high-profile releases like Batman Arkham Origins fell short of sales expectations. Exact numbers are hard to find, as Warner Bros. Interactive does not release detailed financial reports. In order to understand what Fifth Cell was doing between the release of Scribblenauts Unmasked, how the restructuring of Warner impacted them, and the final event in 2016, we need to travel forward in time and then return to 2014. In 2019, a leaked video revealed a cancelled project from Fifth Cell, reportedly titled Scribblenauts Worlds. The game appeared to feature a 3D beat-em-up design with an open-world environment and the story mode that included a zombie invasion. While the game was never officially confirmed, a designer at Fifth Cell, Mike Uziel, confirmed that the project was indeed in development. From what was shown in the leaked footage, Scribblenauts world seemed to depart from the usual 2D style with a grid of pre-made items. This was a departure from the unique typing aspect of the series. It also seemed like there was no notebook anymore and almost nothing that made the series adored besides the world itself. The focus on the game was on action. Despite the cancellation, the footage still offered a first look into what could have been the next installment of the beloved Scribblenauts franchise. The game didn't appear to have the same charm as the previous entries in the series, with the pre-made items lacking the creativity and surprise of the usual Scribblenauts mechanics. It is unclear when exactly Scribblenauts Worlds was in development, but it is most likely that it started after the release of Scribblenauts Unmasked. The leaked footage appeared to be in a late alpha stage, so it's hard to judge the game's potential. While the video was leaked in 2019, the footage itself dated back to 2014, as stated by Wikipedia. I tried to find further information about the date, but since the game was never officially announced, there are little to none sources that confirm this, besides the statements from Mike Uziel. But why was it cancelled? There are multiple reasons for this. Near that time, the team around Jeremiah Salecka was struggling with different problems within the company, as we can read on Glassdoor.com. The employees of Fifth Cell criticized the company of communication issues and poor leadership. They thought that the management team was out of touch with their work and lacked the skills and knowledge to run teams and produce quality work. Because of this, employees felt that job security was low and morale was affected. They also felt that the company's culture was non-existent. One of the major issues employees identified was poor communication within the company. This was visible at all levels, from breakdowns in communication between departments to upper management's secrecy. Some felt that the decision-making process was slow and inefficient due to lack of trust in leadership. The company also faced criticism for its lack of empathy towards employees. Poor planning and the lack of experience resulted in a frequent crunch and missed milestones. When we combine that information with the fact that Warner Bros. Interactive was struggling due to its restructuring, we can come to the conclusion that Warner probably wasn't willing to invest in a project like this. When you assume a franchise is already dead, you don't put money into a project where the development team has no experience and it's unsure if the investment will pay off. Without financial help from Warner, Fifth Cell was unable to continue development on Scribblenauts Worlds, which led to the cancellation of the game in its early stage. We can't blame Salecka for this. He tried his best to keep Scribblenauts alive with the limitations that Warner gave him. If your sugar daddy tells you not to make a puzzle game, you don't make a puzzle game. From late 2014 to early 2016, which marks the end of our journey, Fifth Cell split its team into two. While 25 of them, including Salecka, worked on a new IP called Anchors in the Drift, the other team focused on developing a new idea to revive the Scribblenauts franchise. To ensure that no questions are left unanswered, here is a very brief explanation of what Anchors in the Drift was. Anchors in the Drift was an upcoming free-to-play online RPG game set in a universe where an interdimensional empire had invaded Earth. The game was intended to offer players the freedom to combine and craft their own customized abilities from collectible cards, which are another word for loot boxes. In 2015, the game attempted to be crowdfunded through FIC without a publisher, but it fell 400,000 short of its 500,000 goal. That's the end of the story as far as we are concerned. So here we are. the month of the breaking point, not only for the Scribblenauts franchise, but also for the studio that created it. March 2016. Their very last game with Scribblenauts in the title, which was cancelled just a few days after the closed beta started. Scribblenauts Fighting Words was supposed to be a free-to-play mobile game. The game would have been a word puzzle game where players use their creativity and typing skills to defeat creatures across the Scribblenauts universe. Players would also have been able to recruit characters with unique abilities and use them to save the world from the mind-controlling Blugs. The game's story would have centered around Maxwell and Lily as they recall their amazing adventures with a magic notebook, which included time travel, monster fights, castle storms and more. It was planned to be an RPG word puzzle fighting game with the visual feedback of classic arcade games. There are numerous videos and dozens of screenshots available that show that the game was technically finished and ready to be released. According to some beta testers, the game was not only well made, but also truly fun, even though it was different from the prior entries due to its focus on fighting instead of solving puzzles. The game seemed to retain the same vibes that made the previous entries so enjoyable. It's really a shame that Scribblenauts Fighting Words never saw the light of day. The closed beta phase began on March 19, 2016. Just 2 days later, the game was no more and a whopping 45 employees lost their jobs at 5Cell thanks to the cancellation of the game by Warner Bros. Interactive. This left not only the concerned employees disappointed and confused. Later that day, Zaleska stated, "Unfortunately, due to a project cancellation, we have had to let go of 45 of our very talented staff members today. Layoffs aren't something we take lightly and we'd like to thank all of our employees for all the hard work and dedication over the years. 5Cell as a company is not closing down, but our focus right now is 100% on helping our staff make the transition to other external opportunities." Warner never gave an official statement why they cancelled the game. But we can come to a conclusion if we connect all the dots we have set along the way to this point. The franchise's popularity peaked in 2011 with the release of Scribblenauts Remix for iOS. The game was well received and combined the features of the first two games. Scribblenauts Unlimited was released a year later, building on its success. As it was still a good game that sold well, it lacked innovation from the previous games. The game allowed for more creativity but also showed that the franchise was slowly losing its magic. Scribblenauts Unmasked was an attempt to bring a new twist to the series by combining the DC franchise with the Scribblenauts franchise. However, the game lacked challenge, became repetitive and was too niche, resulting in a commercial failure. Looking back, it's clear that this combination was a bad idea. It was a major blow to the franchise, as it was the first time a Scribblenauts game had failed to meet expectations, with Warner Bros. Losing trust in the developer. In the same year, the franchise faced another setback when the creators of the popular internet meme Neon Cat and Keyboard Cat sued 5Cell and Warner for copyright infringements. Around the same time, former employees of 5Cell began to complain on the internet about the way the company was being managed and the lack of experience in dealing with the Scribblenauts franchise. The poor handling of funding deals and a lack of understanding of their employees led to crunch and delayed deadlines. This was surely a factor that weakened Warner's trust in the team even further. Even though the complaints became public in 2013, it suggests that the problems had already existed for years prior. If we assume that Scribblenauts Worlds was a real project and not just a rumor, the fact that it was cancelled around the same time as a major restructuring and layoffs at Warner happened could be another indicator of why things went the way they did. When we take all that into account and piece it together, we can assume that Warner Bros. Interactive was either unwilling or unable to continue financing the development of Scribblenauts Fighting Worlds. One possible reason could be a lack of faith in the franchise or the team itself, which has led to the cancellation of the game and massive layoffs at Fifth Cell. But while the real reasons remains unknown, the consequences are certain. On March 21st, 2016, the Scribblenauts franchise died for good, ending the 7 years partnership between Warner Bros. Interactive and Fifth Cell. As a result, 45 people lost their jobs and millions of fans were left with a sense of sadness, as they had to come to terms with the fact that the creative force which had brought so much joy to people worldwide would no longer continue to thrive the way they did ever again. Even though Fifth Cell is still in business, they have nothing to do with the franchise they once called their own. At the time of recording this, Warner Bros. Interactive published the last Scribblenauts game in 2018, developed by Shiver Entertainment. Scribblenauts Showdown can be called as the real black sheep of the series. Besides from the art style, it has nothing in common with the prior Scribblenauts games. It's a cheap Super Mario Party ripoff, and the worst part is it's not even good at it. The game only has around 25 minigames, which is already a bad joke when you compare it to the amount of minigames in every Super Mario Party game. In addition, the minigames are not even fun to play. Critics and fans alike gave the game a stunning metascore of around 40, which is still more than it deserves. I seriously can't understand how Warner greenlit this, but said no to that. Maybe it was just bad timing and Scribblenauts Fighting Worlds would have been released in 2018 if the events between 2014 and 2016 hadn't happened. But even if Fifth Cell would get the license back, which is highly unlikely, it probably would not be the same anymore. While the spiritual father Jeremiah Slaska still runs the studio, almost everyone else who worked on the games has left. It would not be impossible for him to capture the vibe of the older games again, but it would be challenging to achieve. The idea behind Scribblenauts was truly special, as it offered players complete freedom to approach each level in their own unique way, using their imagination and creativity to solve the levels. But this freedom was also a double-edged sword. In every Scribblenauts game, players could abuse this feature by using overpowered words to solve most of the puzzles. Honestly, the only levels in the whole series that posed a real challenge were the combination puzzles in Super Scribblenauts. In these puzzles, you had to find the similarities between the shown objects. Fifth Cell attempted to address this issue by introducing a system that rewarded players for using a new mix of words to solve puzzles, but it was never fully resolved. In fact, Scribblenauts Unlimited and the Object Creator made things even worse. If you wanted something specific that was not in the library, you created it yourself. It is no surprise that Unlimited was the last real Scribblenauts game. The game's title made it clear that the possibilities were almost unlimited. How could Fifth Cell build a worthy sequel on top of that? If we think about it, they should have made the series more restricted from the start in 2009. The series was already too open and players had too many opportunities to solve the game. On the other hand, maybe the series would not have received that much attention if they had made the games more limited. But yeah, it's easy to say that in retrospect. So here we are, at the end of our journey through the fascinating yet sad story behind the Scribblenauts franchise. Do you agree with me, or do you have a different opinion about why and how the series ended up where it did? What was your first experience with the series? Maybe you started with Unmasked and liked it a lot, and you can't agree with me about why I said it was bad in comparison. Thanks for your time and joining me on this. Please let me know if you found the video entertaining and if you would like to see similar videos like this in the future. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if all goes well, we will meet again in the future video. Bis dann!